Welcome on in, everybody. Another edition here of the Auburn Undercover podcast on the 24/7 Sports Network. My name is Nathan King, joined here by Phillip Marshall on Thursdays with Phillip, and it's getting to that time of the year now as you'll be listening to this on May 1st. Phillip is definitely the off season. That is
Yeah.
absolutely off season for football and basketball. But as we'll get to later in the show, the Diamond Sports at Auburn are setting up for an interesting finish to the season. But it's crazy, Phillip, that now we're almost a month removed from the end of the basketball season. I mean, it was such a long grind, months on end, and for you and I, we're on the road almost 4 weeks straight. It all just came to an end, and man, we didn't really. You and I were talking before we got going today. Like, we just didn't have that much time to talk about much of a retrospective on the season because you move
Right,
forward so quickly in the portal and your
right.
roster and all that stuff. It was a wild few weeks there on the road, and definitely some fun memories from one of my favorite teams that I've covered at Auburn.
Oh, there's no question. And you were obviously around them a lot more than I was. But in fact, those 4 weeks were the most I had been around them. And they were a fun team to cover. Every team talks a good game about loving each other and all those things. But I really think that was true about this team. And it was an interesting team to me because, I mean, they had really good players and they had a lot of experience, but they certainly didn't have the most NBA level talent or the fourth most NBA level talent. But they were all good. Janai Broom obviously was incredible. One of the probably two best players in the country. I thought he should have been player of the year. And everybody else, I mean, Denver Jones is a really good college basketball player. Same thing about Miles Kelly. Just name any of them. All of them played pretty much. But great teams have a certain chemistry, whatever the sport. And guys like Dylan Cardwell go a long way toward creating that chemistry. Being around him was fun. Being around all of them was fun. But this was a great team. And it's always disappointing, as I've been told by numerous coaches, the further you go, the more it hurts when you lose. And but in college basketball, if you get to the Final Four, you had a great year. And they'll always, I'm sure, look back on it and say, if only this or that had happened, if you make this shot or get this rebound or whatever against Florida, just don't let them get away from it. Just don't let them come back when you got a big lead. And they'll always look at that game with some regret that they had opportunities to win it and didn't. But I think everybody that played on that team that'll be a lifetime memory that they were part of that. And I think it was Bruce Pearl's best team overall. I mean, the 2019 team obviously got to the Final Four too, but they were not great during the season. They were 11-7 in the SEC, and this team was great all year. I say great all year. I mean, like every team, they had some dips, but it was obvious all year that this was a team that had a chance to do big things, and they did do big things. I mean, they beaten Michigan State, beaten Michigan, Creighton, all those games. I mean, it was fun to watch. I don't know if I've recovered yet from all that traveling, but it was fun to watch, and it was fun to. It was also, I'd never been around Tom Izzo or Kelvin Sampson. And I knew Todd Golden, of course, from his time at Auburn. But those guys you can see why they're successful. They're very, very impressive people. But the main memory I have from it is just the obviously just the journey as you get in there and you're thinking, man, this team really could do this. This team could win the whole thing. And being around them and seeing kind of getting an idea of what it was that made this team special, beyond the fact that they were talented, and they certainly were talented and experienced and all those things. But it takes more than that to have a year like that, and they had all those things.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. That's the fun part about, for us, a postseason run like that is, like you said, you get to see more up close and personal what makes a team like that click. It was such a formative thing for me when I was coming up in school to be able to do that a little bit with that 2019 team, like getting to hang out in the locker room and talk to them. And it's just so different. It's so different than any other work setting that you and I get on a daily basis. And by the end of it, you have, guys like, Janai Broom messing with you and asking a question, Todd Pettiford coming up and, messing with everybody. Like, it's honestly over the course of 4 weeks and, some some guys better than other guys, but you sort of almost develop this relationship of what we're here to do. And it's sort of for you, I imagine.
They know you, know you got to know them. And as a result, I think they let their guard down a little bit, especially when the locker room is open like it is in the postseason. Like I wish it still was in the regular season. There was a time. But there becomes it's hard to describe exactly. I mean, but you just feel like you know them, and they know you. I mean, you don't really know much about what these guys are like away from basketball. I mean, but you can get a pretty good idea about who is a genuine guy, and they had a lot of genuine people on that team. I mean, Chris Moore, for instance, what an impressive young man he is. I mean, he didn't play much, and he was okay with that. He was just happy to be there and be part of it, and the attachment people like him and Dylan developed to Auburn and Auburn people, and it was fun. It was in 2019. I think I only covered the actual Final Four. I don't think I covered the regionals, and but it was fun. It was hard for an old dude, but it was fun.
Especially with the travel you got dealt coming into Texas. You might as well have just gotten in the car and
I could have been there quicker. I could have been there quicker if I'd just gotten in my. When I left my house to go to the airport, if I would have just kept going and gone to San Antonio, I'd have been there quicker than I was. But that's life.
Yep, that's the risky road. I had a similar situation. I don't even remember if I told you this, but because there was all that weather in Atlanta, and so I connected where did I connect one place? Oh, New Orleans. I didn't even get off the plane in New Orleans. Connected in Chicago, and then my flight got delayed 5 hours in Chicago. And it was already kind of a long day, and a couple buddies on the beat had just driven, and I texted them in the middle of the day. I was like, I could have just gotten in the back of your car, and I easily would have been home by now. But that's those kinds of trips, and really just this team kind of makes it. Oh, I don't know. It's some people ask me what's what's the more fun things to cover? What teams are more fun to cover? And I don't even think necessarily like a winning team is always great because everybody's happy and the fan base is happy. Sure. But you also need a team with good personality. And this team was just so much fun off the floor. And that's why I think, like you said, they're going to focus on how the season ended for a while. That's going to replay back in their heads for a while. But 2, 3, 4 years down the road, people are going to remember the individuals on this team more so than they remember how the season ended.
Hey, I'm going to tell you a story. It's not related to that trip. In 1984, long before you, Auburn played Miami in the kickoff classic. Well, about 5 or 6 of us decided that we were going to go on the train. It's going to be an adventure and the game was in East Rutherford, New Jersey. So we did. We got on the train and we went there and we had a lot of fun, but it's 24 hours on a train. That's a lot. But we got to Newark and Charles Goldberg, former Auburn beat writer, and I were thinking, we're closer to Newark because our ticket was to New York City. We're closer to East Rutherford here than we'll be in New York City. So we decided we were going to get off there. All our other buddies were harassing us and telling us they'd never see us again and all that stuff. And they went on to New York City. Well, we went to the information desk in Newark and said, how do you get to the Sheraton? I forget what, but anyway, how do we get there? And they said, well, you can take a bus for like $5 and you probably take you about 30 or 45 minutes to get there, or you can get a cab. It'll cost you $10. You'll be there in 5 minutes. Well, we were bound and determined we were going to get there first before our companions did. So we got a cab. We got there. We got a shower. Went down to the cocktail lounge. 2 hours later, here our buddies come dragging in. They had to hire a limo because it was across state lines, and had to pay like $200 because they had to pay for him to take him to the hotel and also pay for him to go back. That was one of the more satisfying nights of my life. I just popped into my head for whatever reason, but it was fun. It was fun, and I know I'll remember it. And getting to the Final Four is hard, and I think they'll be good next year. But being that good is hard, and it's hard, and you got to have. Sometimes the ball's just got to bounce your way.
Well, and one thing that became so clear over the course of the season about that team was how much experience they had together. You don't get the opportunity for Denver Jones to take these steps forward if you didn't already know something about him for a year. You don't get these opportunities to add to Janai Broom's game and make him this versatile all-around piece. Dylan Cardwell doesn't get to be, the best version of himself, which I thought he was at the end of the season, if you didn't know so much about him. And so that's what makes next year so interesting, is that they are potent at a lot of spots. I think they're going to be. They add a lot of good players, but it's just how quickly can you get them to be cohesive?
It takes more than that. I mean, you look at Rutgers this past season. They got 2 top 5 draft picks, 2. And I think they had a losing record. Or right at it if they didn't.
They didn't make the tournament.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sitting there in at the Alamo Dome when they were introducing the starting lineups. Senior. I thought, if Auburn wins this, that'll be the reason. Not the only reason, obviously, but a big reason.
Yeah. Yeah, it adds to the trend of, and look, they've got experience. They have experienced guys coming in next year. They're just not experienced.
Yeah, but they haven't played together. This team, except for Tahad, they've all played together for at least 2 years. And the new guys, Denver wasn't new. He was in his second year, but Miles Kelly had exactly the right kind of personality to just jump in there and be part of it. I never saw any sign of anybody who begrudged anybody what they did and said, well, if I'd had a chance, I would have done that. I never saw any indication of that.
No, I mean, JP Pegues could have had every reason in the world. I mean, that's a frustrating situation for him.
Boy, don't you know
And
it?
I mean, that's probably it. Unless you had all these guys that hit the portal because of their last season, and they're just kind of getting it in the interim. But he's out of eligibility. He should be. He probably will be.
Yeah. And the only way it won't be, I think, is if they, and I think they're going to do this. It's a matter of when. If they go to, you got 5 years to play 5, regardless. And but even if it won't happen for sure until after the house settlement is done. And even if it does happen, I don't know if it would be if players this year would be able to take advantage of it. I don't know. Of course, you never know when somebody's going to go to court. So, and
Right.
I saw there's a guy, I forget where, that's seeking a restraining order because he played in Division II and did not get a waiver. Well, if he gets that restraining order, then if I'm Chaney Johnson, I'm paying close attention to that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You just don't know, and that's why when I see way too early this and way too early that, it is definitely way too early because you don't even know for sure what everybody's roster is going to look like yet, which is an amazing thing. What it's become.
Welcome to the off season. That's what you got to do. And
anymore. You got this like you guys. If you got recruiting in the fall, and you got
free agency,
and then you got the season, and then you got all this. I mean, it hasn't. There's been no breaking point. No, okay, you're through. You're through with the season, the games, but the process goes on and on. And pretty soon it'll be fall again, and they'll be back out there practicing again.
Yeah, it's much more like a professional model now because basically you just go into free agency in the off season and you're just wheeling and dealing. And then by the time June rolls around, you got recruiting camps again. So really, honestly, this time we're in right now is the only quote unquote slow period of the entire calendar year, really. If you follow recruiting, like June and July start to really pick up. And so, Phillip, also want to talk a little football today. And like you said, it'll be here before you know it. The spring was definitely interesting. Speaking of professional model, Hugh Freeze went toward more of an NFL model, did a lot more film study, a lot more walkthrough stuff. Obviously, A-Day reflected that as it did kind of across the country for spring games. But, we've got the whole offseason to talk about this, so we don't necessarily have to dive too deep right now. But it is a crucial year 3 for Hugh Freeze. And I think at the end of the day, what people have to understand, and this will probably come up a lot around media days time, but like the only person who may know a magic number or a magic result that Auburn needs to put out this fall is John Cohen and Auburn's administration, and I doubt they even have one in their heads.
I don't think they do
right now.
I don't think that there is any thought right now about, hey, if he doesn't do this or that, we're going to need to make a change, because I think John Cohen,
I agree,
very much understands the situation he inherited. And I think, and there's no question they lost last 2 years. They've lost games they could have, should have won. But with the situation he inherited, all coaches make mistakes. All coaches make calls that they wish they hadn't made, and they wish they'd done something different, like every play that doesn't work. But they had such small margin for error that those things were magnified, I think, and I don't have any impression that John Cohen would say, even privately, yeah, he's under a lot of pressure. He needs to do this or that, and I think one of the reasons for that is that I'm not criticizing anybody, but you look at David Housel when he was AD, Jay Jacobs when he was AD, that was the job they had always wanted. And John Cohen, on the other hand, came here, and from what I understand, was very clear about, if I'm running this department, if I come there, I'm running this department, and if he thought he wasn't, then he'd leave, because it's not that he doesn't love being at Auburn. I think he does, but it's not his dream job, and that he always wanted. So it would be a lot easier for him, I think, to stand up to some of the pressure that could come than maybe it was for guys before him.
Yeah.
But I think they should be good. I think they should. I don't think they're all the way there yet, but they got a lot of good players. He has done Hugh and his staff have done a great job of replenishing the talent level. But there's no question there comes a time when you got to win. And now, what is winning? I don't think that's. A lot of people say, well, he's got to win 8 or 9 games. I don't think there's any number like that. Like you said, I think it's just the whole picture. How does it look? I don't think he could probably survive going 2-10, say, or something like that. But my opinion is, and it's just my opinion, is something like that is what it would take for his job to be in jeopardy.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about this year, honestly, it makes things a lot easier. The excuses start to dwindle, and like you said, when the margin of error, when your players aren't as good, your margin of error isn't as high, that sort of thing. This season, year 3, already had a couple years bringing in a lot of talented players. You can't necessarily make that many arguments right now that they don't have the pieces to be decent.
You absolutely can't. You absolutely can't. And it's a fair. If they don't, then it's a fair question to say, well, why not? I don't count for any new coach that comes in late. I don't count his first recruiting class, even though it was pretty good and included maybe the best player on the team in Keldrick Falk. But the last 2 have been good, and the first one wasn't like it was lost, and they seem to have worked really hard to shore up places where they needed shoring up. So we'll see. But of course, then the league is brutal. It's brutal. I mean, but this is the odd numbered years are the years Georgia and Alabama come to Jordan-Hare. So that has that's a much better situation than having to go to Athens and Tuscaloosa. I mean, they still got to go to Arkansas. They got to go to Oklahoma, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of those teams have done a lot to shore up their needs too, particularly Oklahoma. And so it's not like that they're just going to be better than everybody. They're not, but they're going to be closer to everybody and as good as more teams. But those kinds of games against somebody that's on basically your same level, you're going to lose some of them most of the time. So
I think looking at it more, when the schedule came, it's been a long time since the schedule came out, and I thought it was bad when I first looked at it, and I truly do think it's awful. I truly do think their schedule is absolutely horrendous. The fact that they do not play a Power 4 home game until October 11th. I think it's just really, I'm not even from a perspective of like difficulty, because Baylor and Oklahoma and Texas A&M should not be, Texas A&M could be pretty good, and Oklahoma could be all right. It's not necessarily like a murderer's row, but it's just, I don't necessarily know, especially when you knew that a non-con, you were already going on the road with a non-conference game in week 1. It's bad. It's
to
just
me,
bad.
what they should have tried to do was try to bribe Baylor into flipping it. Baylor come to Auburn this year, and they'd go to Baylor next year. But Baylor may have said no to that. I don't know. But probably would say no. I think this is their senior quarterback's last year, isn't it? Is he a senior? Say senior.
I don't know. He's good. I mean, he's good.
Yeah. But but yeah, Auburn's had a lot of weird schedule stuff. They really have. And I mean, when they played 5 straight home games last year to start the season. Am I right about
Yes,
that?
correct. Second
Well,
time in just a few years.
That's not good either, because that means you've only got 3 left. The second half in the last 7 games. So, but yeah, not playing at home until October 11th. That's pretty crazy. Sometimes I think the SEC. I wonder how things work like they do, because, like, for instance, when they played LSU every year, when they played there, it was always early in the season. And when they played in Auburn, it was always later in the season. Well, what's the difference in terms of just making the schedule? What's the difference? I never got. I'm sure there's a computer algorithm that does the SEC schedule or most of it. But to me, they should, once that's done, they should look at it and say, well, if we move this game to this, we swap these 2 games from this date to this date, it would make it for more balanced schedule. But it is what it is, and it's going on the road is tough. Texas A&M and Oklahoma, they may not be great, but I promise you, they're going to be hard to beat on the road. And but yeah, that part of it's horrendous. They don't play Ole Miss, they don't play LSU, they don't play Florida, so that part of it's pretty good.
Yep, the back half of the schedule is definitely. If you can, my thing is that. Yes, exactly. You cannot go into Georgia having lost every single one, let alone every single one of those 3 road games, 1 or 2, preferably 2, obviously, preferably 3 if you're Auburn. You'd love to get all of them, but if you're staring 2 and 4 in the face when you're playing Georgia, I don't like the way that's going to taste for them.
No, absolutely not. That's that first part of the season is going to be extremely important. Just not even saying for Hugh Freeze's future, but just for their opportunity to have a season for the first time since 2019 that they feel good about.
Yeah. Keep, like you said, keep your head above water. After they play Georgia, it's home against Missouri, at Arkansas, home against Kentucky, at Vanderbilt, Mercer, and then Alabama at home. So it's just, I mean, Alabama's the strongest of that group, and it's not even close. So it feels like if you can get there with a like you said, decent in a decent spot, you should be good. We've got so much more football to talk about. Of course, the rest of the off season got months and months to do it. And so we won't dive too deep, but wanted to finish up and touch on like I mentioned, the Diamond Sports at Auburn that are moving toward the postseason. I'll touch real quickly on baseball before we get into softball, which is your sport, Phillip. There was a Baseball America bracketology this morning that had Auburn clearly as a region host, the number 5 overall seed, and so they've had a really good season, and in position to do well in the postseason too.
It's a tough position though, because they still got to play. Well, they play Tennessee at Tennessee, and Tennessee's been struggling, but Tennessee's got really good players, and they're really tough at home. And then they play South Carolina at home next week, which is the following week, which is going to be huge because South Carolina's not any good. They really need to sweep that series. They have to win 2, but they need to sweep it. And then they go to Ole Miss, who is also good. And but these preseason bracketology, not preseason, but bracketology things, D1 baseball has them as the number 14 seed. That would be hosting a regional, but not a super regional. And Jason Caldwell and I were talking about that, and he said he thinks that what D1 baseball does is try to project, okay, how you're going to finish. And of course, nobody really knows how you're going to finish. And it sounds like I didn't see the Baseball America one, but it sounds like what they're doing is basing theirs on what's happening right now. And what's right now is that Auburn is number 4 in the RPI and number 1 in strength of schedule. So it's obvious that if you cut it off today, Auburn would be a top 8 seed, I think. So, but it all depends on what happens. And they've had a really good year, and I think theirs, last year was disappointing for everybody. But the thing that stood out to me, and I do watch most of their games, is that their pitching has been far better than it was last year. And they got a lot of veteran guys too. And so I'd be very surprised if they don't, because I think 15-15 in the SEC will get them a regional host. It won't get them a super regional, but it'll get them a regional. I'll be very surprised if they don't get that. At least do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the league is just tremendous. I mean, they go to Texas and they didn't even look bad necessarily. They just get swept by the number 1 team in the country, come home and play really well. Mississippi State fired their head coach the next day.
Yeah,
so that was pretty crazy.
Yes, that doesn't happen during the season in baseball very often.
No, doesn't happen in a lot of sports very often, but definitely not. I remember the one that sticks out to anytime I think about a day after situation, I think about Auburn and LSU playing that crazy game in 2016 where all the points come from Daniel Carlson for Auburn. Yep. And LSU thinks they win on a walk-off. And it felt like those guys were coaching for their jobs. We were saying, like, it's Gus Malzahn and Les Miles. Like, the loser could get fired. And then the next day, the loser did get fired. I don't know if Gus Malzahn necessarily would have been. But
he wouldn't have got fired then, not the next day. But that was weird because I'm watching that last play, and it's obvious that the clock had run out before they snapped the ball. And not only that, the entire left side of their offensive line was not set at all. And I think sometimes officials kind of get caught up in the moment. But then obviously when it's that's the only time I think I've seen where an overturned call ended the game like that. But it was clear they didn't have any choice but to overturn it. And yeah, I mean, you just never do know. You never know. But Lamonis, the Mississippi State coach, took him to a national championship, and or the former Mississippi State coach. But they got a pretty easy road the rest of the season, relatively speaking. They play Missouri, who was 0-21 in the league.
Yeah.
And they may have just said, if we don't do it now, he's probably going to win enough of these games we got left, make it hard to do, so we better go ahead and do it. That's the way it looks.
Right. Talk a little bit about what softball looks like in year one.
Softball postseason's process is different than baseball. In baseball, conference games have a lot of sway. In softball, they say they don't consider conference games or conference standings at all. They just consider the games. And RPI in both sports is big. Strength of schedule is big. Well, just like baseball, Auburn softball team has the number 1 strength of schedule, and they're right now number 15 in the RPI. And people say, how can that be when they're 6-12 in the SEC? Well, that number 1 strength of schedule, and they got a lot of quad 1 wins. And the thing about the SEC is the only team that's not going to get into the regional is going to be Missouri, who has a losing overall record. If they had a winning record, they'd probably get in too. And the last projection I saw had Auburn as the 2 seed at Clemson, who they beat already this season. So they'd have to feel pretty decent about that draw, I would think. But another one last week had them going to Arizona. So I don't know. Probably the biggest thing at stake for them probably this weekend against North Carolina State is don't flop around and lose a couple of games, because North Carolina State also has a losing record, and lose a couple of games, and as a result, get shipped out to Arizona or somewhere. And because Clemson, your fans can get there, and plus, like I said, it's a team you're familiar with, a team you've beaten. So, and in almost every case, the top two, the 3 and 4 seeds are teams that you should beat. So, so I think they're a lock to get in the tournament. And now the other weird thing, now softball tournament, conference tournament's always been single elimination, but now the baseball tournament is also single elimination. And which honestly, and this is even more true in baseball. I mean, you can have a bad team and one great pitcher, and you can't win any games except for when he pitches. And in a single elimination tournament, you might put somebody out. You might put the number 1 seed out if he's on his game. But I don't think the tournaments, especially this year, with change in the baseball tournament, will have much impact at all on postseason. It's it's going to be interesting. I mean, you got in baseball, there's only 15 softball teams because Vanderbilt doesn't play, which is weird to me because it seems like that's a sport they could excel in. But in baseball, you'll have 4 games the first day. In softball, you'll have 3, and the losers of all those games will be gone. And then the top 4 seeds have a double bye. So then the next day you'll have 4 more games, and then those 4 teams will be gone. And then the top 4 seeds jump into it. Well, in baseball, softball pitchers can pitch a lot, but in baseball, all those top 4 seeds are going to get in there, and everybody else is going to be running out of pitchers already. So one of those seeds ought to win it. That's my point. But softball is different, like I said, because pitchers can pitch. But to play on the first day, which in the past it's just been like 2 teams playing on the first day. But with that many teams playing on the first day, whoever wins on the first day, they got to win 5 games to win the tournament. That's not impossible in softball. It's pretty much impossible in baseball, pitching wise.
What do you make overall of the year 1 for the Malvos?
It's speaking of terrible schedules. I mean, they lost their first 4 series and got swept in all of them. They were 0-12, but 3 of those games were against top 5 teams, and Florida, Texas A&M, and Texas. And the other one was at Mississippi State, who's a nationally ranked team. So the question I had after all that was, would they be able to hold it together? And they have. They've been a much better, and not just because of the competition. They've been a much better team the second half of the conference season than they were the first. And they're 6-6 right now, or they finished 6-6 because they don't play in the conference this week. They finished 6-6 the second half. That's a pretty good improvement from 0-12, and it got them in the regional, because at that point when you're 0-12, that becomes your goal, is to make sure you get in the regional, which is not the greatest achievement in the SEC softball, because most years either all of them or all but one get in, and but it's not the greatest achievement, but it's a better achievement than not getting in. So. And they, if the way S.J. Garrett pitched against South Carolina, who was ranked as high as number 9, and Auburn beat them 2 out of 3 this past weekend. if she pitches like she did against them, they'll have a chance against anybody when she's out there pitching like that. I mean, she pitched a one-hitter, and if I'd been the official scorer, she'd have pitched a no-hitter because it was a blooper that the second baseman had her glove on, and you could legitimately call it a hit, but you could have legitimately called it an error too. And if I'm the home scorekeeping person and my pitcher's got a no-hitter going, that's going. At that point, she had she's retired the first 15 batters she faced. And then she had a walk, and then that error, and then she retired everybody, or that hit, and then she retired the rest of them. So she was good. And she's not Maddie Pinto. She doesn't throw 70 miles an hour, but she can make the ball do tricks.
Yeah, it's I mean, just like baseball and basketball and pretty much every other sport, it's like how well can you just keep up and just kind of keep pace with the rest of the league, and then the great teams will sort of rise above. But I mean, it is very impressive what they did to bounce back from such a struggling start to the season, and obviously they've got a chance to make some noise in the postseason. So,
and think about all those losses. There was at least one game in every one of those series that they had in their grasp and couldn't, and then let it get away. They got beat twice on walk-offs. So it was, but they don't have enough pitchers, reliable pitchers, to make, I don't think, to make a deep run in the SEC tournament playing every day. On the other hand, in regional, doesn't take as much, especially as long as you keep winning. I mean, and so we'll see about that. But the SEC tournament's fun, but it won't. And the only way the SEC tournament in either sport's going to mean a lot is if somebody gets in that wasn't going to get in. And the only way that could happen in softball would be for Missouri to win the tournament. And they got 4 SEC wins, and I don't think that's going to happen. Probably not in baseball either, because Missouri, somebody will get to play Missouri in the first game. Who may, I'm telling you, they've been run ruled 5 out of their last 7 games. They're 0-21, and they may go 0-30. I don't remember anybody ever being 0-21, much less 0-30. Baseball seems like you'd accidentally win 1 or 2 somewhere.
To do that and then have the softball result they're having right now, and then to also have been winless in basketball a couple years ago too, last year. Excuse me, last year.
Yeah,
not great.
Yeah, but they bounced back well in basketball. But,
absolutely.
It's it's and the NIL. There are only a handful of softball teams that programs that really are into it, that have significant amount of NIL money. But baseball is a little different. I mean, baseball and what softball needs is, what you need in softball is some really rich guy that really loves softball and really wants you to win. That's what you need in softball. But it'll be fun, and I like postseason tournaments in whatever sport. So it should be fun to watch. But to answer your original question, I think the softball players seem to really like and respect the Malvos, and but now they're gonna have like third base, shortstop, second base, right field, center field, left field, and one of their catchers are all going to be gone. They're seniors. They got a lot of work to do. They're going to have their pitchers will be back, but they need help there too. They're going to have to do a lot. Now, they do have their first baseman, a freshman named Annalee Adams. She's hitting 417, I think it is. She didn't play the first 9 games. She's hitting 417. And the interesting thing, I wrote something about this the other day, and I'm going to write a story about it next week. She's not fast at all. She is not fleet of foot. And she's still hitting 417 because in softball, people that are hitting in the 400s are usually people that can beat out infield hits. There are a lot more infield hits in softball than there are in baseball. And she's not a threat on infield hits. She just hits line drives everywhere. She's got a chance to be an All-American caliber player, I think. But she'll be the best player they got coming back, and S.J. Guerin, the pitcher. So they're gonna have a lot to do in the portal, and how much money they have to spend in the portal, or how much big a factor that is, I don't know. Probably they would say not enough. I would imagine money. I mean,
yeah. No, you can never have enough nowadays, especially with the market price being driven up.
Man, it's unbelievable. It's truly unbelievable making all these kids rich. And you think about all the great players. I think about all the great players I've covered over the years and how much money they would have gotten in a similar circumstance. I mean, Bo, Cam, Charles Barkley, Chuck Person. Man.
Yep. Yeah, that's wild. That's another off season for an Auburn, like basketball's having to do right now. Bruce Pearl said it last week. He felt like the commitment was pretty good from Auburn's NIL right now. And it's so interesting to hear as the years have gone on, people talk more and more openly about that kind of thing. I feel like when it first started, it was like, it's separate from the action. It's kind of a third party thing. So I can't really talk about it that much. And now you get
even know.
Correct. Which is silly.
So, of course. And but yeah, now it's just I mean, it's if it's so different. You lose all your players. The building of a program is totally changed. I mean, you had to be. You had all these seniors where you had to have all these other guys ready to step up and take their place. And now you got to go find somebody to take their place, and then try to hang on to the ones you have. And when you got guys getting millions of dollars, mercy. And it's even in football when you got so many more players. I mean, in basketball, I think everybody on scholarship at Auburn, I know it was this case a couple of years ago, and I'm sure it still is, was getting 6 figures. But that's only like 12 guys. Football, you got 85 or thereabouts that you got to try to keep happy. We can't keep them all happy, which is why somebody feels like he's not going to play, he leaves. We can get into all this. My favorite part of it, or most bizarre part of it, is people transferred in December, going through spring practice, and then getting back in the portal. It's crazy.
Yep. Yeah, everything's everything's a lot reactive right now. I mean, you can see from the numbers, just the inflation of year over year, how many more transfers there are. I mean, look at somebody like, I say reactive because look at somebody like Keontae Scott, who transferred from Auburn, went to Houston, not a big surprise to land there because he lands with Zach Etheridge, who brought him to Auburn. Zach Etheridge then goes and takes the job at Miami, and now Keontae Scott is back in the portal and visiting Miami. I'm not sure if he's going to end up there. I would imagine that
would be my guess.
Right, just trying to follow his coach.
But then I mean, and I definitely don't want to get into a Chad Baker-Mazara debate and he's certainly not the only one. Look at how many places he's been, and there's a bunch of them like that. There's a bunch of guys that have been 3 or 4 places, a bunch. And then you got what, Moochie Johnson, is that his name at South Carolina?
Yeah, Meechie Johnson. Yeah.
Transferred from Ohio State to South Carolina. Transferred from South Carolina back to Ohio State. Paid for Ohio State this season, and now has transferred back to South Carolina. He's been to He's been to 2 schools 4 times.
Yeah, that was the one. Just the graphic of like Ohio State, South Carolina was pretty funny. Even on this basketball roster, Phillip, coming up, there are, I'm not going to count them off the top of my head, but there are several players that have not been at one institution. So Keyshawn Hall will be at his 4th school in 4 years. Oh goodness, just off the top of my head, I just lost it.
At least he should be good at adapting.
Correct. Kevin Overton comes over from Texas Tech. He'll be at his 3rd school in 3 years. James Scott is not on the team. He's visiting from Louisville this weekend. If he does come to Auburn, he'll be on his 3rd school in as many years. Yeah, Chad Baker-Mazara is a wild case. I mean, his 2 years at Auburn, by the end of his college career, that will be the only place he was at multiple years. 5 schools in 6 years for him.
And fortunately for him, one of them was a junior college, which means he gets to play another year.
Yep, going out to LA.
Yep.
For Eric Musselman, Bruce Pearl's buddy. I say with tongue in cheek. Tongue firmly in cheek.
Firmly, yes. But it's going to be interesting as always, and it's amazing. Auburn basketball, the year-round interest that is now there. And that is one thing I have to say about the transfer portal. It has contributed to, not just at Auburn, everywhere, to people still paying attention to basketball after the season's over. Because before NIL and transfers, most of the best players signed in November. So there wasn't really a whole lot more recruiting to be done, and so you just went, and from spring until middle of October there wasn't anything going on. That's always. And are your guys going to stay? I'm guessing, and I don't know anything, but my guess is that kid from Louisville must be going to come to Auburn if he's coming down to visit at this stage.
Maybe, yeah. Interesting back and forth with him, because just a couple days ago, NC State was like, it was one of those things where it was like almost silently done. Like everyone was just sort of acting like it was already finished, that he was going to go to NC State. And apparently this visit is coming as a surprise to NC State, that he is even taking this visit. So that's interesting.
Okay. Well,
I don't know. Yeah, I guess you never know, right?
Might be come down to the dollar signs, maybe.
Yep. It could come down to Bruce Pearl versus Will Wade, which is fun as well.
Yeah. But the other thing, and then, Auburn's got to, assuming Todd Pettiford doesn't go in the draft, they got to be ready to, and they may already have a deal with him, for all I know. If you don't go, here's what we're going to do. And he may have already agreed to it, but that's not going to be cheap either. Because if he was on the open market, he'd get a lot of money.
Yep. I thought it was extremely important. I thought one of the most important things said by anyone around the Auburn program was the day after they lost the Final Four, Todd Pettiford saying, if I come back to school, well, he didn't say this, but he implied it, that if he comes back to college, it'll be at Auburn.
At Auburn, yeah.
Getting that sort of, there's no portal, because Broome did the same thing last year. It was like, I'm not considering the transfer portal. If I'm coming back, I'm coming back to Auburn. Almost like it was an afterthought. That was a big deal.
When does the portal's closed, didn't it?
Oh yeah, no, it closed last week.
I don't see him being a first round draft pick. I could be wrong.
I don't either. And I think Auburn doesn't think so either, but you never know. He'll go to the combine. He's good enough to go straight. He'll go straight to the combine. So we'll see what happens there. But I felt really bad today, Philip, on social media. I scared a lot of people, and if you're one of these people, I apologize. The first sentence of my tweet was Todd Pettiford is officially in the NBA draft. What I should have couched that a little, because in my head now that takes such a different meaning, because being in the draft doesn't mean anything now. Being in the draft is just like
Right.
you're just. But I do understand now how that, and a bunch of
Yeah.
people said that they
Yeah.
saw that as they were scrolling and said, "Oh my gosh, Nathan, don't scare me
Yeah.
like
I
that."
know. Well, here's the thing: if you're close to good enough, and you can go to the combine or even the G League combine, then you ought to do it. And and if nothing else, good information on from these guys about where they think you can improve.
I mean, it was not night and day, but Janai Broom from year one to year two. So he
Oh
goes
yeah,
from all SEC to all American. I'm not saying that's the only reason why Auburn revamped its offense around him and he got better, but he talked many times, particularly early that season, about the feedback from the NBA process, from
yeah.
NBA
I've seen
personnel,
him
and
in a
how.
couple, whatever they're worth, in a couple of mock drafts. I've seen him late in the first round.
I, yep, why
Be
not?
great.
I'd get.
He's the best thing I can say about Janai Broom, he seems like a really nice young man first, but second that he was getting a lot of money to play at Auburn this year, but you would have never known it by the way he handled himself or conducted himself. He was very much a team guy.
Yeah, Janai Broom, and talking about memories from that last season. You very much saw the Aura Gang, as they called themselves. Janai Broom, Miles Kelly, and Todd Pettiford were a close friend group. Yeah, they were flashy in terms of the way they. I guess honestly, I just dressed. I guess is just the word I was trying to avoid there. But
Yeah.
yeah, in terms of how they carried themselves, like Janai Broom was a very nonchalant superstar for Auburn. Just
Oh yeah.
kind of
I
went
don't
about his
know.
business, and yeah.
I don't know that I've seen a player more crushed than he was after they lost to Florida in the
Oh
Final
yeah,
Four. I mean, and I understand. Heck, you get that far, you want to take the next two steps. But I was it seemed like he was a really good teammate, and not
absolutely,
everybody in that situation would be.
absolutely.
So,
Put his jersey up is my standpoint on it. I think you should do it right before next season starts.
they'll put it up there. I don't know if they'll do it that quick or not. I
Hope not.
would. Now, I wouldn't have done it right after his last game, like happened in Colorado.
Oh
But
gosh,
and they didn't just retire their jersey; they retired their number,
yeah,
which is different. The retired number means no. I mean, the only numbers I know of that are retired at Auburn are 7 and 88. Even 2 isn't retired.
right. It's just sort of a
Nobody's
unspoken,
had it
yeah.
since then. Uh, but yeah, I thought that was and I actually felt bad for the kid, to be honest with you. The draft, Shador.
Yeah, no, yeah. At a certain point, and I mean, like, there's one thing to have, and I don't blame people for being tired of the media frenzy with it. I mean, I am too, but there's a certain point where like you can have all this buzz and craziness, and you can be that kind of a player. And he's, he has that certain personality. But at the end of the day, like you're also just a kid, and that
Yeah,
just sucks for anybody. Like, and I don't
yeah.
care who you are.
You're a
Like,
kid
it's
who
just
had become convinced that you're going to be one of probably a top 5 draft pick.
right.
And I think that I've read some other people say this. Obviously, I know nothing, but that they say part of his problem was that his daddy's his agent, and if he'd had a real agent that could have one told him how he needed to conduct himself in those interviews, and that if those interviews didn't matter, they wouldn't be doing them, and two, find out where he stood. So Yeah, I know Mel Kiper says this about you, but that's not what the feedback I'm getting. And then there was Mel Kiper just losing it. I found that to be completely ridiculous.
Yeah, the agent thing too also was. So I saw somebody talking about was like the damage control aspect is such a big thing when it comes to that position.
Right.
And if the interview process was as bad as people made it out to be, you could have maybe put yourself in a better position to be like, well, here's what he meant. Or let's do something else here. Let's figure something else out. Instead, the reports were that, just there was none of that. It was kind of people didn't like what they heard, and that was that. There was not necessarily attempts to make amends for that or have damage control
Right,
from like an
exactly.
agent perspective. Yeah.
Did you see the quote from Shiloh Sanders when he hired the
No.
agent? He said, our daddy's been our agent, and that didn't work out too good.
That's funny.
Yeah,
All you can do
Dion
is
strangely quiet in all this.
Yep. Well, it seems like they're laughing it off now. Hopefully,
Yeah, I mean, we're doing like the Atlanta defensive coordinator. They say it happens to some other players, calling and impersonating. That's sick.
It's not good. It's not good. You got a problem if it's happening to multiple players from multiple different people. You've clearly got some sort of issue with the phones you've given out or whatever. I don't know.
Well, Shador, according to what I read, had a cell phone just for that.
Right.
And the only people he gave the number to were the personnel people with NFL teams.
Right.
And this guy got it because his daddy, he looked at his daddy's tablet and it was on there. I tell you what now, I can't even imagine if I'd done something like that with my daddy. It would not have been pretty. It probably wasn't pretty with him either.
No, probably not. Especially with that amount of money they got fined.
Yep.
But all right, Phillip. I appreciate everybody for listening today. I enjoyed it. Going about an hour now. Figure we should wrap it up. But I enjoyed the conversation as always.
Always fun. See you soon.
Yes, sir. Appreciate everybody for listening. We'll talk to y'all later.